Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Travel Royally podcast. We're thrilled this week to welcome John Novosel Jr. He's the co-creator of Tour Tempo. Tour Tempo is a best-selling book, and it's a 5-star app on Apple. In addition to Tour Tempo, he has patented or co-patented 4 swing training aids, and he recently authored Tour Tempo Force, which hit #1 on Apple Books for all sports. He's given thousands of speed lessons to golfers of all abilities, from major champions through beginners. He also walks the walk at over 50. He still produces swing speeds of over 130 miles an hour and has competed in long drive events. And his best drive is in competition is 402 yards. I want to hear more about that. But John has presented his Tour Tempo concepts on tempo, speed, and power around the globe, including seminars with PGA Sweden, PGA Holland, PGA Germany, PGA of America, the World Golf Fitness Summit, and many others. He has certifications with PPI, SSC Golf, and he's got his own certification program for Tour Tempo Speed instructors. I'm out of breath. John, thank you, and welcome to the Travel Royally podcast.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Well, we're really excited to have you. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Tour Tempo, I want to tell you how I became aware of it. A friend of mine, Jim Masters in Nebraska, told me about it. And like every amateur golfer who wants to improve their swing, or I guess the end result is we want to be more consistent, right? I started watching some of John's videos, and the #1 takeaway that I had was that in my takeaway on my backswing, I was taking it away way too slow. I sped it up and started hitting my drives 20 yards further, much to the surprise and dismay of all my golfing buddies, who were happier when I was hitting it 230 instead of 250. So, yeah, that's how I came to know who you are. So I'm really excited to talk with you more about Tour Tempo.
Let's talk just about that, what you just said, because that really makes my heart feel good at a deep level. And I know it does for my father as well. We love hearing those stories. John Garrity, who was co-author of the original book, Tour Tempo, would be so happy as well to hear that. And what you're saying is a common thing that we hear from a lot of golfers. There's been this mantra out there ever since Bobby Jones coined the phrase, "No one ever swung a golf club too slowly." We've all thought of this idea that we have to swing the club smooth and slow and these types of things. But when you look at the tour pros, they don't do that. Rory McIlroy, Tiger Woods. If you look at any long driver, you see these amazingly quick swings. And so when we take any type of regular golfer and we increase the speed of that backswing, hit the ball farther. I've just recently had 2 guys that have picked up 30 yards of carry. Think about that, 30 yards of carry. And one was already carrying at 270 because they had this low and slow takeaway and basically a slow backswing. And it's very hard for the brain and body to create a ton of speed after that slow movement in the backswing. So what you're saying is something I hear all the time. I love hearing about it. And it's one of the things that's a great way to work on your game is just try increasing the speed of your backswing. Now, there's more to Tour Tempo than just that,
Right.
But that's a great way to start.
Right. Well, what's interesting when you think about it, I think what we confuse as fluid, when I think of Ernie Els or Freddie Couples, their swings look effortless, and we might say they look slow, but they are producing swing speeds of over 110 miles an hour, even with a swing that's very languid, if you will.
Exactly. One of the things that tour pros give us is this misconception in our brain that they're swinging slow because they move so well. So we think that's moving slow, but they're just moving great. I think the big piece of Tour Tempo, we just talked about, was the elapsed time from takeaway to impact. And what we found is it's about 1 second for tour men on the PGA Tour. It's about a second. So from the time you take it away all the way back to impact, a guy like Rory McIlroy, Tiger Woods, Jordan Spieth, they're going to do that in about a second, sometimes even less. The other big piece of tour tempo that's been a discovery is that tempo is a fundamental of the swing, and it's not really what you get to choose it to be. We've all heard this idea that, oh, I'm a slow walker, slow talker, I'll swing slow. But really, tempo is more like mechanics in the golf swing, as far as you need to adhere to this. And the rule that we came up with is this 3-to-1 ratio of backswing to downswing. So when you do a 3-to-1 ratio, you do it faster. And you brought this word up at the beginning of the show, consistent. You become more consistent. So I think that's what everybody's looking for. How can I be more consistent? How can I hit the ball farther? And how can I actually do something that I want to ask you about? How can I think less? So when you were swinging it back faster, was that your only thought?
No, well, yeah, basically it was.
See,
I
that's a
wasn't
good
thinking
thing.
of all I was thinking. Yeah, well, so now you're playing psychologist on me.
Yeah.
Yes, it was just take it back faster. I wasn't thinking about anything else.
That's a huge thing. Absolutely, because we are, I mean, especially nowadays, we are inundated everywhere you look. There's a new swing thought, a new idea on the golf swing. There's force plates, launch monitors, all these different things, and you have to get that brain to really calm down and focus as you're going to swing a golf club. And one great way to do it is focusing on your tempo. What I've found is a golfer will come in to see me, want to increase speed and whatnot, and he'll have some mechanical flaws. I can't shore those up in 10 swings. That's going to take us some time. But you know what I can change in 10 swings? Your tempo, especially if your tempo is slow going back, which most people are. I can make that happen, I don't know, 5 swings, 10 swings, and then we figure out how to hit a ball with that. That takes another 10 swings. So in 20 to 25 swings, you can transform your tempo, transform your swing, and really pick up that yardage. And I think that's what's exciting for golfers, that we can make this happen right now, right today, right here.
Excellent. Well, I want to go back to the beginning.
Sure.
I want to learn, how did you come to golf in the first place?
My dad introduced me to the game when I was probably 6 years old. So I've been playing golf for the better part of 45 years, 47 years now, actually. But it was a passion of his, and then it became a passion of mine. And he's always been, he was inventing things back then. We just didn't create the patents and whatnot until a little bit later.
Was your dad a professional golfer or just?
No, he was just he played college football at K-State. He was a Wildcat, and he was really into sports, and he always wanted to improve his golf game and get us into golf, because football's a rough sport. And he had a few concussions in college and that kind of thing. So he wanted to put us into a sport that was a little bit easier on the body. And I had two younger brothers, and we all grew up playing golf and loved playing with him as well.
Well, tell us about Tour Tempo as a company.
Sure. Just a quick, brief background is that, my dad didn't just think to himself, oh, everybody needs to do this 3-to-1 ratio. It was more of something that he uncovered while we were doing an infomercial, if you remember what those are from back in the day.
Yeah.
But golf infomercials were a big thing. And we had figured out that while we were looking at some video of some of these pros, that we saw this 3-to-1 ratio of the backswing to downswing. And we didn't really think much of it. But then when we started looking at Tiger and some video that we just pulled from TV, we realized that pretty much within a few milliseconds, all these PGA Tour players were swinging with this 3-to-1 ratio. And that led him to contact John Garrity. The book was published by Doubleday, Tour Tempo, and that was really on the full swing. The next thing we did was, how are we going to help people with this discovery? Because it's great to know that there's a 3-to-1 ratio, you need to swing faster. Well, what we did is we created, at the time, a CD, but now it's an app for Apple and Android. And so basically you can listen or swing to, this is Rory McIlroy's tempo, 21-7, bump, 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 bump. So that first tone tells you to start your backswing. The second tone is for the top of the backswing, and the third tone is for impact. And when you start to swing to those tones, the very first thing people tell me is, I'll never be able to swing that fast. That's what they always say, because they're used to swinging slower. And then they say, well, I can't think about anything else. And I'm thinking, I'm in the background doing backflips and cheering, because I don't want, you'll never be a good golfer with a lot of swing thoughts, especially on the course. Somehow we can all do it on the driving range.
Isn't that what Ben Hogan talked about? That if he had zero swing thoughts, he was unbeatable.
Exactly. And I know a lot of baseball. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of baseball hitters will say the same thing. You can't think and hit at the same time. Anyway, that app has been huge for golfers. You can literally go download it right now, take the driving range. There's different flavors, if you will. It starts as slow as 30-10, 27-9, 24-8. I was just playing 21-7, which is Tiger in his prime and Rory right now, and most guys on tour. And then there's even a kind of, I call it the Ricky Fowler on a Red Bull, which is 18-6. 18-6 is Bryson DeChambeau, Henrik Stenson.
Down that low?
Yeah, he is actually. It's especially when he's really swinging fast and hard. So anyway, these different tempos that you can listen to in the app allow you to apply this discovery to your own swing. And one of the things you find in golf is that every day you wake up, you feel a little different. It's a little bit different at the golf course and all that. And so by rekindling these tones, bump, 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 you can lock yourself into that tempo. So that experience you had of just swinging faster, that'll last you for a while. But then the consistency may or may not be there. But when you use the tones, you'll have that to sort of go back to, get yourself primed, get it in your head. And now you're ready to go out to the golf course and make those swings. So that's been a huge thing with Tour Tempo from the book and the apps. And then we also have training aids as well.
Yeah, I was going to get to that. Well, and we'll talk more about that, because I want people to know where they can find you and where they can buy that. But is your dad still involved in the business?
My dad just recently retired. He's been doing this forever, and he's recently retired, but he still loves these stories, because in the beginning, when we first came out with this, people were like, swing faster, what? And the training aids we've had for a long time were about increasing speed. And 25 years ago, when we had the training aids, speed wasn't a big thing like it is today. Yeah. So we were kind of looked on a little bit differently then. But when the book came out, published by Doubleday, all of a sudden we became very smart, and or at least people thought we were smarter. And then ever since Tiger has really come to prominence, and really everyone has seen what he's done with speed and power, that's helped the business as well.
Yeah. It's interesting how the game has changed. And I've never been a fan of, Baum and Gau's golf. But I mean, I think the way that I've played better than some of my friends anyway is to think my way around the golf course, and to not always go at the pin, as an example, or I play away from hazards, particularly if my ball flight is a fade. I stay away from the right side if there's water or some kind of a hazard over there. So I've always tried to think my way around the golf course. But what I found with the 20 yards of distance I got from you is it's easier to come into a green with a 9-iron than a 7-iron, right? I mean,
yep.
It's just a lot.
Yeah. That's kind of all the new data that's coming out from Scott Fawcett and Every Shot Count, Mark Brody and these guys, is that if you don't sacrifice the accuracy, if you don't have to swing harder and that type of thing, if you can make what you consider a normal swing, but you add 20 yards to that, and you're coming in with 9 irons instead of 7 irons, or you're hitting a par 5 and 2, it does make the game more fun. It doesn't mean you have to go at pins, but you're just coming in with higher lofted clubs. You're able to stop the ball. So many good things can happen when you get that easy distance to your game.
Yeah, it's interesting. I used to read a lot of golf instruction. Now I don't even know why I get Golf Digest or Golf Magazine anymore, because it's all instruction that I don't pay any attention to anymore. I used to. But one of the books that I read that was one of the most impactful for me, and I can't think of the name of it, but I know you'll know it. It was Pia Nilsson and Lynn Marriott,
Sure.
where it was the concept, it was like called 54 or something like that would be a perfect round of golf if you birdied every hole.
Right.
The concept that I loved from their book was that there are two boxes that you're in. One is the thinking box, right? Before you address the ball, I'm thinking, I'm visualizing the shot, I'm thinking about what I'm going to do. But when I step into the play box, right, all I'm thinking about is executing the shot. I'm not thinking about there's water on the right or there's sand on the left or whatever. And if I blend that with what you've taught me, if I can say that,
Sure.
is I've only got my one thought, and that's swing speed or the tempo.
I love that. I know Pia and Lynn well. They have pioneered that. Their concept is Vision 54, like you said, the play box and the think box. I know a lot of other of the people out there in that realm. Debbie Cruz has a similar thing. Is that once you've made all the left brain sort of thinking, when you start to approach that golf ball, you need to shift into an athletic mindset, more of a right brain, more of creative, all those types of things, and that's why there's a hidden little trick to tour tempo, and it's music. A lot of golfers play better when they listen to music. And although this isn't, the kind of music you'd probably relax to, bum, 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 it is music. It does something to the brain. It does engage the right brain, and it gets you in more to that creative state so that you're not thinking about, like you said, hazards or how far you have to carry it or any of these things. You're more into how are you going to react athletically when you make this golf swing? And I think all golfers would perform better if they could do that. It's like you said, let's do our thinking back here. As soon as I get up here, let's quiet down, focus on rhythm, and create something, and kind of have this mindset of, hey, everybody, watch this. And that's kind of what you want to create.
Right. Before we started, I was telling you that one of the things that impressed me the most was a video that I saw that you did with a gentleman named Blake. And it was taken at, looks like a local driving range. And Blake didn't have a bad golf swing, but he had a golf swing that looks like 90% of the guys that I play with. And he didn't have a particularly long backswing. His takeaway was slow. And then when you contrast that to the after you're working with him, he had a longer backswing. He had very close, if not at perfect tempo. And tell us about that process that you worked on with him, and what kind of results did he achieve?
Yeah, absolutely. And I wrote about this in Tour Tempo Force. And in what we did with Blake is your typical prototypical golfer, upper 50s. He's played for 20 some years, but he had that slow backswing. He had a short backswing. And immediately when I saw this and I saw that the speed he had with what he had, I knew this guy is going to gain some serious yards. So the first thing we did was we worked on increasing the speed of the backswing with using those tour tempo tones. And typically, I'm sort of a Vince Lombardi kind of coach. I like to really, I don't want you to ever feel bad, and I'm not gonna sugarcoat things. And I want you to work hard, and I want you to make a stretch, because if we're not stretching, you're not going to get the 20 to 30 yards or whatever you want. So I think he was, 30-10 or whatever, and I put him right to 21-7. So I really want him to stretch. And then the other piece of that puzzle is, as we get older, we don't have as much range of motion. And the golf world out there is really big on, exercise for golf. And I am too. I'm into working out. But I think there's this misconception that it's going to take you a year to improve your body. I can get some improvements with golfers just within a 20-minute session, just by using some bands and whatnot to basically light up the muscles we need to light up to get you more motion. Because here's the secret of the Force. If I can get you to make a longer, faster backswing, you're going to hit farther. I'm batting 1,000 as a coach for longer and faster. It's absolutely a hard and fast rule. You're going to hit the ball farther. And typically what I find is you're not going to lose any accuracy, because most people can figure out either squaring up the club or what it might be. And then the tempo and the length of swing don't really have anything to do with the accuracy. They almost swing better because they're moving better. and they're moving faster. I don't know if you've ever tried to like guide your hand slowly to throw something in the trash basket. It, for me, doesn't work. But if I just kind of go like this, I'm gonna, hit the trash basket. So anyway, with Blake, we actually did a few sessions together, and it was incredible what he did. And like you said, one of my favorite things to do is take someone's swing, compare it to a tour pro, show them that huge difference in tempo, do the tempo, and then show them again how they line up at impact. And that gives the golfer some confidence that, hey, I actually do have the tempo of a Rory McIlroy or whoever. They may not have the power and all the other mechanics that go with it, but they've got that tempo. And if, like I said, if I can get you a little longer backswing, you're going to hit the ball farther, and it's going to feel effortless because you don't have to muscle it. I think there's this myth out there today that to hit it farther, I got to swing harder. That I found doesn't work. But swinging better and swinging faster tempo-wise, that's going to get you some yards.
Excellent. Yeah, it was exciting literally exciting to watch him improve, because, like I said, my swing probably doesn't look too different from his. And I think that most of my golf buddies have similar swings. And so I'm excited. I was very excited to see that. Now, I've got a question for you. This 3-to-1 ratio, is that only with your longer clubs, or does that apply to the short game as well?
Great question. That's a really good question. We get that one a lot. And the answer is it does only apply to full swings. So if you're hitting a full driver, you should be around 3-to-1. If you're hitting a full 7-iron, 3-to-1. If you're hitting a full pitching wedge, 3-to-1. But if you're hitting a 9-iron into the wind and you're over in Scotland or whatever, and it's blowing so hard off the bay, then that might go more 2-to-1, because we don't want to have as much necessarily speed in that downswing, because you want to create less spin. So as soon as we take the effort level or shorten the swing, we're going to go into those 2-to-1 tones. So the 3-to-1s for full swing, we made a discovery on the short game, and what you would call a shorter or less effort swing, those are going to be more 2-to-1. And on the app, we provide those, and it sounds a little bit different. So again, here's that 3-to-1, bump, bump, bump. That's the short game, bump, bump, bump. So there's bump, bump, bump. So there's more time in the downswing. You're going to use that for putting, chipping, wedges. And like I said, if you're hitting that 9-iron into a 40-mile-an-hour breeze, you're going to use it for that as well.
Yeah, but it's interesting. A couple of things that you said really stand out. One is that you're batting 1,000% as a coach with improving speed and distance. Hold on, there's a caveat to that. If you have a short, slow swing, I'm batting 1,000. It's going to happen in about 30 minutes. Yeah. But other variables, if it's already sort of longer and faster, then it might take, that makes it a little tougher. But yeah. And then the other thing is this idea that you need a similar tempo in the short game. I've used Ernie Els and Freddie Couples as guys with just unbelievable golf swings. It seems so fluid, never rushed, and whether they're hitting driver or a greenside pitch, it appears as though they've got the same tempo. May not be the right word, but the same, not being rushed.
Sure. Yep.
Right. I mean, you've seen more golf swings than I have, obviously by a wide margin, but it's painful to watch people chunk chips, and you're like, they're swinging so fast, or whatever.
Let me jump in there on that, because you make a great point, and I think this happens a lot with average golfers, and it can be long game or short game. So here's what will happen: they'll take a slow backswing, okay. Subconsciously, as they get to the top, the subconscious and even sometimes the conscious mind goes, we got to create some speed here. So they'll jerk it from the top after a slow backswing, and they'll hit a bad shot, and all their buddies will say, you got too quick. And then on the next swing, they'll slow down even more, right? And then they get to the top of the backswing, and then they got to speed it up. So what I try to profess to a lot of people when I see that slow takeaway is, if we can create some speed in the takeaway and in the middle part of the backswing, then you don't have to rush in the transition, because you just naturally come down and everything will be fine. If you get slow, you're going to have a burst of speed somehow. that will never work. And you mentioned it for chipping, same thing there. Those tones are fairly quick. So if you go slow back in a chipping motion, something's gonna have to give. One thing I'll tell you is in my conversations I've had with a guy named Robert Grober, who was a physicist from Yale. He's right now doing all kinds of really cool stuff, but he talked about this thing being like a pendulum, especially for the short game. So if you think a pendulum, it's driven by gravity. And what that means is gravity never changes. So you want your chipping and pitching to feel like the same force back and through. And that's a huge key and that's why I'm a big fan of back and forth swings for chipping and pitching, because that can help. Again, these are all easy things to implement, and it'll help somebody that struggles with, dare I say, the yips. But, if you have some hit in your stroke, work on back and forth, because that's the idea of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Yeah, I think the pendulum's a great metaphor for, back and through, but it can't be slow, right?
Correct. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, what's crazy is if you take a pendulum and you drop the thing, it actually moves fairly quick.
Yeah.
So the other interesting thing about a pendulum is getting into the weeds here, but Robert told me something that's called pendulums are isochronistic. And what iso means is same, chronism is time. It's the same amount of time every time. So again, when you use these tones, especially for the short game, and you have the pendulum feel, you're going to get consistent. Your brain now knows, like, when are you getting to impact? And that really helps. Now, apply one little tiny thought for chipping, like brush the grass, and now all of a sudden you've transformed kind of what you do around the greens.
Yeah, excellent point. Now, I know that you teach people. You're in Kansas, and you teach people there. But how do you train or work with people like me who live 1,500 miles away?
Sure thing. Obviously it starts with getting a face on video. And a lot of people send me slow motion, but I actually prefer just normal standard video, typically from an iPhone. And one thing we should tell everybody out there, when I refer to 21.7 or 24.8, those are frames of video that I'm referring to. And typically there's 30 frames in 1 second. So if you send me your video and let's just say it's 32:11, okay? So it's 32 frames going back. That's over 1 second. And then 11 down is a third of a second. So you're taking a long time there. So the very first thing I tell you is, hey, let's get that to 24.8 or 21.7, right? And then I can look at your swing on video and say, here's where I would try to lengthen it with these particular things, give you a couple drills. And then if you're really into it, like you're a nut, I would send you to the training aids, mainly the speed ball, to get some resistance at impact to learn how to handle that collision.
Excellent. Yeah, as I said, I've looked at all the training aids you have, and I bought one for that friend of mine that turned it on. That was his Christmas gift.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. So, how does your teaching affect people with poor mechanics? And I don't mean tempo. I mean, I'm thinking of guys who come over the top, outside in, or other mechanical things. Is what you teach applicable to people even with shitty golf swing?
I'm glad you said it. Absolutely. And everyone's a little bit different, but let's pretend you've got a Jim Furyk guy that doesn't hit it like Jim Furyk, but he's got a lot of motion in his swing, right? And it takes a long time for him to make that swing. If we put him on tour tempo and we speed that swing up, some of those motions will disappear because there's not time for them. So that's one huge benefit you can do. And that's why I always like to start with tempo first, because we might clear up some mechanics. Let's say we do the tempo and you're still coming over the top. You're still your trail shoulder's getting, going nuts. Then we need to start to get into some standard drills and standard feels and things like that might help do that. But the sort of the money maker or the secret sauce is that after you do that, you still need to go back to tempo, because when you go onto the golf course and if you think you're going to think these 5 things out there, it's not going to work. Yeah. So what I like to do is use a training aid, use the driving range, bake in the new feel, and then get back to your tempo to go play golf. Maybe one feel with you on the course, but you can't. It's just such a myth, or it's such a thing that we all fall for, that think we're going to take these 3 or 4 thoughts out there. It just doesn't happen.
Right. Again, I'm going to misquote Ben Hogan, but he was talking about how if he has 3 swing thoughts, he's an average. He'll play like the rest of the field. If he has 2, he's a little better than the field. If he plays with 1 swing thought, he can win, and if he's got 0 swing thoughts, he's unbeatable. It was something similar to that, right? Like,
I love that quote. I'll have to look that up, but that's brilliant. And I think that's so think about the guy that's got the slice problem, works on his slice. He's now got 4 thoughts. Let's see if we can now just go to rhythm. And that's 1 thought. And rhythm's almost 0 because it's not mechanical. So I think that's brilliant. And I think that could really help somebody, especially after they've worked on their swing.
Okay, so you've got a handful of tools that are available that people can buy on your website. And you've got videos and so forth. And you also, a moment ago, talked about exercise and these bands that you use, and that you said, hey, in 20 minutes, it doesn't take a year to change your body. Those types of changes can happen immediately. What types of exercises do you recommend for people to become more flexible?
My big thing is using this principle called reciprocal inhibition. And I know it's like some big words there, but what it means is that when you flex your bicep, your brain tells the reciprocating muscle, that's your tricep, it inhibits it. It tells it to shut down. So what we need to do, if you can't get your arms in the air, we need to figure out how can we light up the muscles that will relax the muscles that allow you to move. Also, what I've found is any type of resistance that you give the body. For example, I love to just take someone and have them do a 1-arm row with a band. And the very first time they do it, they kind of do all these weird things. And then I sort of just coach them like, let's add rotation to that. And the next thing you know, by adding this resistance, the brain recruits more muscles to move better. So I'm not a fan of static stretching. I don't think the brain reacts well to that. I don't think it wants to do it. And that does take a long time to happen. But reciprocal inhibition and resistance get you some movement right here, right now. And that's a big way that I do that. So that would be my keys right there.
Okay. So if people engage with you and they say, okay, I'll send you my front on swing and I buy some of the training aids, how do I get access to the stretches and the exercises that you use with the bands and other devices?
Sure. I've got a little recode series that I've got on the Tour Tempo Speed website. And that the idea is to sort of recode your muscles to move a little bit better, especially for golf. And namely, we need to be able to load the hips. We need to be able to load the shoulders, or actually it's called thoracic rotation. We need to be able to get the arms in the air. So they're all geared towards those specific things.
Excellent. So how do you recommend people engage with you? So we'll have people listening to this. I'm sure there'll be people that say, I got to at least try this. What's the best way to engage with you?
Definitely. You can get onto go to the Tour Tempo Speed website. It's tourtempospeed.com. Right now, we're redoing the Tour Tempo website, and that will just send you straight to the app. If you want to find the apps, you can just search for those for Apple or Android. And then I'm on Instagram at Tour Tempo, but so you can hit me up on Instagram. You can also hit me up through the Tour Tempo Speed website. And I'm fairly responsive. I'll be at the PGA show in Orlando at the end of the month. But yeah, hit me up. I love seeing golfers swings. I don't know what's going on, but it doesn't. I always like trying to figure out, why does this person do that? And because sometimes they've been told to, and sometimes it just happens. So, yeah. But those are some good ways to reach out.
It sounds like you like to watch train crashes and car crashes as well. Can't take your eyes away from mishaps like that.
I like to watch good swings even more, though. I will say that we all do.
Yeah, it's I've got something just came to me. You brought up Jim Furyk a moment ago, And I want to get your opinion. I'm sure you've measured him from a tempo standpoint, but when I think of him as being having to take longer because of the loop at the top, but maybe not. And then the other one is Hideki Matsuyama, who's got that pause at the top that seems interminable as you're watching it, but it must be in sync with what you're talking about.
Jim Furyk is, and I'll give you a little background on Hideki as well. So for Jim Furyk, I believe if I remember correctly, he was around 25.8. And so even though he did the loop thing and all that, it wasn't crazy long this way behind his head. It was just more up. So he sort of still fit the model, and he sort of kept his body moving. The other thing about Jim Furyk was he didn't really hit the ball very far. He could obviously hit it very straight, and he's won a lot of money. But yeah, he fit pretty well. Hideki Matsuyama is an interesting one. Hideki has perfect mechanics. Most golfers do not. Hideki doesn't hit the ball near as far as he could if he had a more tour tempo like swing. In other words, getting rid of the pause. As a matter of fact, I've seen on Instagram where he increased his ball speed 11 miles an hour by getting rid of the pause and making a faster backswing. So when I was so excited to see that on Instagram, because I'd been telling people that for years, and so that finally was verified. The other thing on Hideki is, for whatever reason, when he did a drill with a pause, and that pause somehow he liked and his coach liked, and that was what they came up with. But if he wanted to hit farther, he could get rid of it and swing faster. And then also he's got perfect mechanics. So I would tell the average golfer, you're not Hideki, your mechanics aren't good. And then also you need to hit the ball farther. So that's why I don't think he's a great tempo model by any means.
What about John Daly? What's his tempo?
He was 24.8, and what was interesting, he sort of fits that idea of longer and faster, because John Daly had such, and I'm talking in his heyday, the backswing was so unbelievably long, and he did it in 24.8. So that was sort of one of the ways he created power, was long and fast. He's obviously an incredible hand-eye coordination and athlete, but he totally fit the model, and really was this, all of a sudden we're looking at this whole new idea of hey, maybe long's okay. Obviously had great flexibility.
Yeah. I saw something recently. I read this last week, and I don't remember her name, but there's a woman on the LPGA tour, and I wish I could remember her name, but they measured her proximity to the hole, and she was the best in golf, including the PGA Tour.
Wow.
So from 180 yards, she may be hitting 5-iron, where a typical male pro may be hitting 8-iron from that distance, and she was closer in proximity from every distance.
Wow, that's amazing.
And so my guess is that obviously she doesn't drive the ball as far. But have you worked with women golfers, and are the results as dramatic as it is with men?
They are, and most women swing even slower than men, and most women are a little bit almost too flexible, so they almost need to tighten things up. But it's interesting you mentioned that, because I get asked a lot about the LPGA, because you see some slower tempos out there, and it kind of goes back to that Hideki Matsuyama thing, is their mechanics are unbelievable. The mechanics are so good. They could swing any tempo and hit the ball good because the mechanics are so good. And then B, they don't hit that far, most of them. I know some of them are long, and the longer ones typically have faster tempos. Annika Sorenstam had 20. She was like Tiger Woods tempo. One of the greatest players ever, Mickey Wright, was 24.8. So a lot of the bigger hitters have that more 3-to-1 ratio in that type of tempo. So I think the bottom line is, no matter who you are, no matter what age, faster tempo, longer swing, you're going to get some results. The key is, it'd be nice to put some parameters or guardrails on it, so you knew, like, what's my current tempo? And guess what? I've got an app for that. It's free. It's called Tour Tempo Frame Counter. You can download that right now on your iPhone, and you can count your own frames and see what your tempo is. If it's, 36-9, you're going to hit the ball farther. If it's 21-7, we're going to have to do other stuff. No soup for you.
Yeah, if it's 40-17, we got big problems.
If it's 40, but see, I always tell people the good news is, I always start with the bad news. The bad news is your tempo sucks. The good news is your tempo sucks because we can improve it.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me see. Oh, I know one more question. I have two more questions. One, what's your best tip for someone who's listening to this and is eager? They're going to play today or go to the range today. They don't have time to watch your videos. What would be one tip or swing thought you would give someone?
I like what you told me that you did, that you had your instant results with. My one tip would go, let's make a faster backswing and not think about things. Do it with some practice swings first. Try a faster backswing and see how that feels. If that doesn't, that's tip A. Tip B is, especially with longer clubs, see if you can make the same tempo but a little longer swing. Just try both of those and see what happens. But the faster backswing really is a great one to just give a go and see what happens. If I had to go for one extra one, if those two didn't resonate, find some sort of pendulum-like feel of doing back and forth swings. A good buddy of mine is Padraig Harrington. He does a lot of back and forth swings, and that's always a great thing to do, especially for the average golfer that doesn't, play a lot of golf or hit a lot of range balls, because it loosens you up.
Yeah, excellent. Padraig's one of my favorite players. Before he won the Masters, before he won his majors in general, I took my son to the Masters on a Tuesday, and this is, probably 18 years ago or so. And my son was wearing a Glasgow Celtic jersey, green and white hoops, and he got his picture taken next to Padraig as he came off the 18th at Augusta, which was really, and I've got it framed, and it's very cool. But
Padraig is the genuine article, such a great guy, and he's willing to try stuff, and it's amazing what he's done with his speeds and tempo. He's got unbelievably quick tempo now, and I was with him on the range in St. Louis at the event there, and it was incredible to watch him hit a golf ball with the tempo he's got. He's in that 18.6 range with a nice long motion, and he's hitting it long.
I heard him say he's hitting it longer now than ever.
And for sure. His ball, I mean, I saw him hitting irons with I think 5-iron around 150 ball speed, which is huge. And then I've seen him 183, 185 on course. So that's that's as much as a long player on the regular tour. So he's taken his tempo, he's sped up his tempo, he's worked out, he's done some work, I know, with some other teachers as well. So he's doing some incredible stuff.
Yeah, he's a classic tinkerer, right?
He is.
He'll try just about anything. I think one of the things
that's why he and I hit it off in the beginning.
He said, is he still putting cross-handed?
He does, yeah. I believe so.
Yeah, I think he said that that's the one thing he'd advise every person playing is putt cross-handed. Not that has anything to do with what we're talking about, but I'm a huge fan of his.
That's awesome.
Last question is, and you mentioned a little bit earlier, but remind everyone, how can they find you? How can they engage with you? How can they buy your swing aids?
Sure thing. So for the website, tourtempospeed.com. The Tour Tempo website's currently under construction, so you can kind of get to our products and all those things at Tour Tempo Speed. On Instagram and Twitter, I'm at Tour Tempo. So yeah, reach out. Love to hear from people. Love to see the swings, especially the good ones. Yeah, I think it's just, if I could close with just a comment, it's like, try this. It's such an easy thing to do. And you really can transform your tempo in 10, 15 swings. And it's always interesting to see the results.
Yeah. John, I have to agree with you that when I take the club head back faster now than I did 2 months ago, now it's natural and it's not rushed. It feels like it's not like I'm yanking it back very fast. It's just faster than what I had been. And yeah, I've had great results. So I'm very excited about that.
Awesome. I'm so glad to hear it. So let me know when I'm coming on my next tour to Ireland, Scotland.
Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. But John, thank you very much. It was wonderful having you. I hope everyone that's listening will engage with John and take him up on his offer to help us all become better golfers. Thank you very much, John. We truly appreciate your time.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It's a great discussion.
Thanks.